On the formula, we have 204 districts that are on the cap. We have 239 districts that are on the guarantee. In FY17, we have 277 districts on the formula. We have 130 districts on the cap. We have 203 districts on the guarantee. Note the progression. This was also purposeful. We want a formula that moves districts on the formula, onto the formula. We want a formula that phases us off the cap. We want a formula that reduces the number of districts that are on the guarantee. So if you're on the guarantee, you are of necessity or by design, by the method that we use to put the guarantee is that it wasn't going to be a 100% guarantee, that it was going to be it would be a negative number. But you can't lose more than 1% of you can't lose more than 1% of your you can't lose aid that's greater than 1% of your total state and local capacity. Of those districts on the formula, there are 39 districts on the formula that will receive a negative number, because you can get a formula calculation that receives less than that could yield 0. But again, it can't yield you. So those people, by necessity, are somewhere between 0 and 1. A negative 0 and 1% of total state and local resources. In FY17, there are 38 districts on the formula who will receive, whose formula earnings would be calculated as negative. With TPP, if you take formula plus the TPP loss, in FY16 there are 323 districts that would, again for operating purposes, would receive less than they did the year before. In 17, that number is 290. So the most on those districts that are on the formula, not affected by TPP, the most they can lose is 1% of an amount that's equal to 1% of their total state and local resources. On TPP, there's a sliding scale. The poorest districts cannot lose TPP in an amount that's greater than 1% of their total state and local resources. In the 5th quintile, no district can lose more than, in TPP alone, than 2% of its an amount that's equal to greater than 2% of its total state and local resources. And in the quintiles in between, this what we have styled as the 2nd quintile, it's 1.25, in the 3rd quintile it's 1.5, in the 4th quintile it's 1.75. So if you're in the 1st quintile, you cannot, if you're on the guarantee, if you lose money under the foundation and you lose the maximum amount allowed under TPP, you can't lose more than 2%. And that progresses up. In the 2nd quintile, it's 2.25. In the 3rd quintile, it's 2.5. In the 4th quintile, it's 2.75. In the 5th quintile, it is 3. In FY16, there are only 26 districts that lose an amount that is 3% of their total state and local resources. In FY17, it is 12 districts. On the formula in FY16, there are 128 districts that lose less than $100,000. You know, essentially it's a position, a shared services agreement, an efficiency somewhere within some other efficiency, cost savings measure somewhere within the budget. Or they might look to their fund balances, which as I think most of you are aware, many school districts have balances of some amount, some somewhat modest, many much greater than modest. Okay, with that, I'd be happy to